Excess rainwater will always flood off Exmoor any which way it can, down any channel it can find. The picturesque village of Lynmouth, where Exmoor meets the sea, lies where two such channels meet. When they flood, the East Lyn and West Lyn rivers carry a huge amount of water through the village. Over the centuries, Lynmouth was known to suffer occasional bouts of really severe flooding. Despite this knowledge, the Victorians built the little village up into a very popular tourist attraction. Little room to build in the little fishing village meant hotels were built right on the banks of both rivers as they flowed towards the sea. On occasion, this flooding was severe and could do damage, much damage. In 1952, a build-up of water drained off Exmoor exacerbated by unseasonably wet weather. And on the night of the 15th of August, the huge deluge carrying much debris, trees, rocks and more destroyed much of the little village. The following filmed items from British Pathé, Gaumont and the BBC tell that story in its aftermath.
Yesterday, Lynmouth was a peaceful holiday resort. Today, it is a ruin. Pathé cameraman Bill Jordan was on the spot soon after floods had swept down from the hills to smash the little town. And this is his story. I knew very little about Lynmouth before I arrived. When I looked around, I was almost glad I didn't. Friends had sent me picture postcards of Watersmeet, a beauty spot only a few miles away. It looked very pretty and quiet. It was this stream, swollen with rain, that became a raging torrent, and it was these boulders that were swept down to Lynmouth to destroy shops, hotels and homes. In one single night, the main street had become a wild, churning river. It was dark red from the Devon soil. When I was there, nobody could tell for certain how many had been killed. We knew it was at least 22. I talked to some of the people who had lost their homes and their friends. They were still bewildered, still unable to grasp that their little town, which some of the locals used to call Honeymoon Town, was now just rubble. They told me of the awful speed with which the flood struck and of the dreadful sound of the water, roaring and smashing its way through their homes. Already work has begun to mend the battered town. The army is there, and with them the men of the St. John's Ambulance and the women of the WVS, just as they were during the blitzes. Help has been generously given. Nearby villagers have opened their homes to give shelter to the homeless. Broken furniture littered the streets. As I stepped over the rubble to leave Lynmouth, a great dark cloud hung over the little town. Slowly, rain began to fall again.
This is Mr. Tom Bevan speaking. I am now standing on the front steps of my hotel. What you see in front of you, this raging torrent, was originally the main road from Minehead through Lynmouth to Linton. This was caused by the overflowing of the West Lyn River during Friday night's storm. On Friday afternoon it rained continuously, and from 6 o'clock onwards the downpour was torrential. In the hotel we first had signs of flooding about 8 o'clock, but took little notice of this as our cellars had flooded before. However, the water suddenly rose at a tremendous speed and we had to evacuate even the ground floor. About 9:30, there was a tremendous roar. The West Lyn had broken its banks and dashed against the side of the hotel, bringing with it thousands of tons of rocks and debris. In its course, it carried away the chapel opposite and a fruit shop. 3 people who were in the fruit shop were swept through the window against the lounge windows of the hotel, which you see on my left. We managed to pull them through in the nick of time. I then ordered everyone to go to the second floor, where they all huddled in the corridors for safety. In all, we had 60 people in the hotel the whole of the night. I'm thankful to say, and I do praise them, for there was not the slightest sign of panic. We had no food, no water, and no lights except a few Christmas candles. At about 2 a.m., the rear portion of the hotel collapsed with a tremendous roar. But luckily, the main building stood.
Ken Oxenham, one of the local fishermen. The great storm swept away all our boats, and as you can see, it's even swept away the harbour. We all put extra ropes and chains on our boats, expecting there to be some sort of a flood coming down the river. And just as we got ashore, surely enough, it came down like a tidal wave and swept the boats away before our eyes. It was incredible. After we could see that there was no good remaining, our thoughts ran to our wives and our children, and we made our way up the street. And unfortunately, the wall was beginning to fall, beginning to wash away. We had to take an alternative route, and a quick one, up through the woods and up to where I knew my wife and child were living in a caravan. I had to climb up the car park, which is now washed away, which was at that time beginning to wash away. I scrambled up through just in time to get them out and to take them to a place what appeared to be safe. From this spot, you could see the deluge making itself strongly felt against the Lyndale Hotel there, and boulders were coming down, and clothing, and 2 buildings fell down right before our eyes. It was a sight to remember. And then as we watched further, we saw a row of cottages near the river and the flashes of lightning, because it was dark by this time. In the flashes of lightning, we saw these houses fold up like a pack of cards. We swept out with the river amid the agonizing screams of some of the local inhabitants, which I knew very well.
Major Elliott.
The army were called out on Friday night to assist in evacuating the town of Lynmouth. Once the inhabitants had been taken to safety, our task became the re-establishment of communications between the 2 halves of the town. To do this, we're building a footbridge across the river just here. In due course, in order to reopen communications in North Devon, it's expected that we'll be asked to produce a Bailey bridge.
Back into Lynmouth, the little North Devon seaside resort now smashed to ruins by the Great Flood. Her people return. For this is their home, the place where they lived and worked and were happy. Once bright lights in houses that stood near the path of the river told of hospitality to be found within. Then the flood came, and now the survivors have come back to search among the rubble for their few belongings. Wreckage on the seashore tells its own story of that dreadful night. And still the sea yields up all that remains of those who lived and died in the little town. But the people of Lynmouth are not beaten. The flood could not take away their courage and determination, and they plan to build anew. The nation, led by Her Majesty the Queen, and indeed the world, heard their cry for assistance, and generously have they given. Accommodation is quickly being provided for the homeless, and already work is underway to clear a site where the new town will be built. Lynmouth shall not die, for here are Devon folk. Less than 3 months ago, a great flood swept down from the hills to smash the little Devon town of Lynmouth, and still wrecked homes bear witness to the disaster which killed so many. Now the Duke of Edinburgh, on his tour of the West Country, visits the people who have come back, and with Mrs. Slater, chairman of the council, sees the damage for himself. A simple notice records how high the flood reached. caravan town for those who lost their homes has sprung up in neighbouring Linton, but soon all will be housed in new prefab bungalows. The first of these is opened by the Duke. The people of Lynmouth were praised by the Duke for their fine work of rebuilding. But now comes news that heavy rains have caused another landslide into the valley of the West Lyn.
Grim reminder of the night of terror when the great floods ravaged Lynmouth last August is a memorial notice board marking the spot where 2 Australian girl visitors were swept away, together with the house in which they stayed. Lynmouth today is a proud village as 3 policemen received decorations for outstanding bravery. The British Empire Medal for Police Constable Stanley Pavey, who within sound of the West Lyn River speaks of his award.
I would like to say how very pleased and proud I am to receive the British Empire Medal, and I'd like to feel that this is given to me on behalf of the numerous other people who did such splendid work on that awful night.
And a young village policeman, Derek Harper, is named a George Medal hero after saving 10 lives.
The honour of the George Medal has been bestowed upon me, and I do deem it a very, very great honour, both for myself and for the Devon Constabulary and police forces as a whole.
Now, Lynmouth lives again. Expert planning has made certain that the tragedy of 1952 can never be repeated. But the planners, while insisting on absolute safety from future flooding, have interfered as little as possible with Lynmouth's ancient loveliness. Stone by stone, Lynmouth has been restored. Old houses have recovered their familiar charm. The scars of 1952 have been steadily healed. Learning from disaster, the rebuilders of Lynmouth have strengthened her defences. Even while the new defences were still incomplete, the thousands who have known and loved the twin towns of Linton and Lynmouth refused to be frightened away. This part of Devonshire also has a meaning to millions who have never been here, for it is the country of Lorna Doone. Inland from these peaceful streets lies the beauty of Exmoor, where the exploits of the wild Doones seem more like history than fiction. Fiction or history, the wildness has departed, but the beauty remains. The double town is like a 2-storied house. This is Lynmouth, on the ground floor, so to speak. It lies at the foot of the cliffs where the rivers join, a quaint tangle of little streets waiting to be explored, so compact and self-sufficient that it's difficult to realize that the other town, Linton, tops the great cliffs above us, 500 feet higher than the harbour. Fishing? Yes, in the river there's trout and salmon, second to none in the West Country. In the harbour there's bass, mullet and pollock, and offshore you'll find rock whiting, pollock and occasionally mackerel. Or if you thirst after heavier game, there's scat, conger and tope. Years ago, the waters brought tragedy to Lynmouth. Now all they bring is a rich harvest without danger, for the waters have been tamed and the town lives again.